Nintendo Switch fans can finally play Crash Bandicoot on handhelds thanks to the new trilogy. Well, that's what I'd like to say, but it's really not true. If you recall, the Switch version of Skylanders Imaginators actually had Crash Bandicoot as a playable character. But on to the topic at hand, the original Crash Bandicoot games are now on handhelds with the new trilogy. Last year, PS4 got an exclusive remake of the first 3 Crash Bandicoot games, and now it's multi-platform on the Xbox One, PC, and the Nintendo Switch. So let's dive right in. Here is my review of the Nintendo Switch version of Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy. Story's never been an overly strong focus in these games, but there is a story to this. Crash Bandicoot is about, well, a bandicoot named Crash Bandicoot, a test subject in some experiments that the evil Dr. Neo Cortex is performing, trying to create an army of mutated animals to take over the world. After he escapes, he fights back against Neo Cortex to save a fellow prisoner that he's got a crush on. And that's pretty much how the story goes in these games. It's like Mega Man or Sonic. Crash fights Cortex, he wins, Cortex finds some new scheme, and the process repeats. As far as gameplay is concerned, Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy is a collection of 3 3D action platformers from the original PlayStation console. In this collection you've got Crash Bandicoot, Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, and a few extra DLC levels that are exclusive to the remake. Now, what makes this remake so good is that it's like the Secret of Mana and Adventures of Mana remakes for the PlayStation Vita. The developers didn't redesign levels, they didn't change controls, they didn't change camera angles. Everything here is exactly the way it was on the PS1. They were very faithful to the originals, and anyone who played the originals will jump right into these and feel like they're playing the same games all over again, just a lot prettier than they used to be. This is the way a lot of fans say they want their remakes, and it's a double-edged sword. On one side, it's perfect if you want to feel nostalgia for those old games that you played when you were kids. And on the other side, brutally difficult games being remastered like this remain brutally difficult. Now let's get to how you actually go through these games. Crash Bandicoot was like Sonic or Mega Man in that you went through different stages. Complete a stage and you move on to the next one. In these stages you're running through 3D environments, platforming and attacking both enemies and crates to gain up points as you make your way from point A to point B to complete the level and move on to the next. This is a pretty simple formula, and back in the PS1 days it was really neat because there weren't very many 3D platformers back then. And because this was them starting out and trying, Crash Bandicoot 1 has a few very difficult problems here. The way the levels are set up lead to a very frustrating, very brutally difficult experience. You've got large pits that you have to jump over, and a lot of times you barely have enough room over the pit to make your jump. So if you are one split second too late on your button input, you will fall down and immediately die. Having these areas every once in a while is fine. Crash Bandicoot has them literally everywhere. Now the second and third games of the series fix this tenfold with much faster pacing, more fluid jumping, and much better level design. In other words, Crash Bandicoot 1 is a very frustrating, very difficult platformer, while 2 and 3 are difficult, but much easier to tackle and much more fun. And now let's get into how much time you'll be spending here. This trilogy has more than 80 levels, plus the DLC levels that were added later on, so you've got a fair bit to go through. When I was playing through these games, I managed to clear a few stages in Crash 1 every hour or so. By the time I'd completed all 3 games, I'd spent well over 15 hours into the trilogy. With that in mind, you're not being overloaded with content, but there's definitely plenty of fun to be had here. Now let's get into a couple problems I have with the game's controls. As a lot of people have been noting since the game came out, the Switch version of N. Sane Trilogy has slightly more input delay than the PS4 and other versions. Now if you've never played on the PS4, it probably won't be an issue, but it is worth noting that there is a good bit of input lag, which makes the incredibly hard experience of the first game even harder. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that this game does not play well with the Switch going from handheld to dock mode and vice versa. When you've got your Switch docked and you pull it out to use handheld mode, it will not recognize handheld mode as an active controller, even if you deactivate the controller you were using before. It'll get stuck on a screen telling you to reconnect the controller, and unless you completely close out of the game and reboot it, it won't let you play in handheld mode. And now let's dive into presentation. When you've got this game docked, it looks absolutely beautiful. All of the renders look really smooth, look really detailed, and all around it just looks like a pretty game. When you got it in handheld mode, it still looks pretty, but there's a noticeable blurring effect when you're playing in handheld mode. It's not Wolfenstein 2 bad, but it's still pretty noticeable and very strange, especially when you go directly from dock to handheld mode. Now, performance is very, very good. It runs at a solid 30 frames per second, and I never saw the game drop on me outside of menus. Now let's go into battery life, which isn't as much as I was wanting it to be, but not awful. Here are my battery times from 100% to 0%. Maximum brightness with the Wi-Fi on, 2 hours and 41 minutes. Maximum brightness with the Wi-Fi off, 2 hours and 49 minutes. Lower brightness with the Wi-Fi on, 3 hours and 8 minutes. Lower brightness with the Wi-Fi off, 3 hours and 15 minutes. So, about average for a 3D game. Now, in conclusion, the N. Sane Trilogy makes the jump to handheld fans optimize pretty well for the most part, as well as giving handheld fans a shot at the trilogy, since PS Vita owners in North America still can't play the originals. Now, there are some controller issues and the still brutally difficult experience of the first game. It's still a lot of fun to be able to dive into the Switch with Crash Bandicoot in a game outside of Skylanders. Reviews to Go rates Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy for the Nintendo Switch a 7 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a great day.